What is up, guys? It is Baelmis, and today I am going to be going over my add-ons and UI per viewer request, because I've had a couple people ask me how I get the game to look and feel exactly how it does on my screen and what you guys see on live stream. So we're going to jump straight into it here, because I've done a couple takes of this and I haven't really liked how they turned out. So I'm going to kind of try and take the mistakes that I've had over the past couple recordings and fix them, and we'll move forward doing it correctly into this one. We're going to jump straight into it with Angry Assignments. I'm just going to go down the list of my add-ons page. Angry Assignments is a super lightweight add-on that I use in one of my raid teams. Basically what it does is it allows the raid leader to create notes on everybody's screen who has the add-on, and we use it just as a reminder of like, hey, phase 1, we're going to use this healer cooldown. Phase 2, these two people are going to go soak, and in phase 3 we're going to lust and kill the boss. It's just kind of a way to have a fight rundown on everybody's screen in the raid team. Keeps us a little bit more organized, and it's really handy. So if you don't use it and you're in a raid team that does use it, I recommend getting it because I actually really like having it. Moving on to Azurite Tooltip. This one is a quality of life add-on that I highly recommend, actually. Basically, it just shows you all of the Asura traits for your specs when you hover over an Azurite piece. The default Blizzard UI doesn't do this. I really like it because it just saves time, and it kind of gives me an idea of what Azurite gear I have in my bags a little bit faster, so kind of cleans it up a little bit. Not needed by any means. If you don't have it, you just have to shift right click and you can see where your Azurite traits are, but you just hover over with the add-on and it tells you everything you need to know. So moving on, we have Battleground Enemies. I don't actually use this one a lot anymore. I could probably disable it. Basically what it is, it's a frame for rated battlegrounds and random battlegrounds that will tell you range, health, trinket, and DRs of everyone on the enemy team. Really useful in a rated battleground setting. It's also pretty useful in a random battleground setting, but I don't really do RBGs anymore or random battlegrounds, so I just kind of have it here on the off chance I do RBGs anyway. Big debuffs. Highly recommend this add-on. What it does is it takes priority ability usage, and it puts it on the player frame. So if I use like Ice Barrier, it will put a really big icon on the focus, target, and player frame of Ice Barrier. Same thing for like Lust or like Icy Veins. So priority stuff that you really want to know is up, especially in like Arena with Icy Veins. You'll see it really big in your face on your target and stuff like that. So say I'm fighting a Fire Mage and they hit Combust, I'll see it right here if I miss it right here or on Gladius for whatever reason. Just kind of nice, makes increases your awareness a little bit. Not necessary, but I do recommend it. It also works with like stuns and things of that nature, stuns and CC. So you see Polymorph really big and when it's going to fall, Kidney Shot really big and when it's going to fall, that kind of thing. Really like it, highly recommend it, super good. Worth checking it out if you don't have it. Big Wigs, extremely well-known add-on. It's fairly similar to DBM. The reason I use Big Wigs is because it is a little bit cleaner, in my opinion. It just looks a little bit more pleasing to me. I think if you have DBM and it works for you, great. If you use Big Wigs and it works for you, great. I personally am not an in-depth raider enough to really have my personal preference on either or, so I side with Big Wigs just because of the way it looks. Moving on, Details is my damage meter. It's kind of just like Recount or Scada. The main reason I use Details is because it is more accurate and you get a really in-depth breakdown of everything. So if I want to like click on this game, I can be like, okay, this is how much my Ice Lance did, and go down and look at the average crit and the average normal hit, what's my largest crit of the game, or stuff like that. You get a really nice fight breakdown, and it also gives you a lot of other stuff. You get like let me see here, crowd control done and received, interrupts, dispels, CC breaks, buff up time, mana regeneration, healing done, HPS, overhealing, DPS, damage done, damage taken. It just kind of covers everything that you need, anything that you would want to track, and it also does it more accurately than any other add-on out there right now. So highly recommend Details if you're using something like Scada or Recount. I know a lot of people like Scada because you can have the double window, whereas Recount you can't. Details you can also have 2 windows up. I believe you can have as many as you want, actually. I know one of my roommates uses 3 windows all the time. So if you're using Scada right now because you can get 2 windows, go with Details. You can get 2 windows as well and it's more accurate. So That being said, details is my damage meter. I turn off a lot of other stuff. I just really use the damage meter. That's all I care about. Moving on, Dominos is my action bar replacement. It is how I keybind. It is also how I get my bars to look how they are. It is how I move my zone ability and my extra action bar, my encounter bar, and then how I move my alerts and stuff like that. I prefer Dominos over Bartender because I don't really know why. I've used it longer and I got more comfortable with it. I think that's really the main thing. If you want something similar to default UI and you just want to keybind easier, Bartender does a great job of that as well. I mean, they both realistically do the same thing. I can't really side with one over the other. I just personally use Dominos because I've used it much longer. So there is my action bar like swap, how I get my bars to look the way they are, remove the kind of Blizzard default bar as Dominos. That's how I do that. One thing I do want to note, the cast bar I actually disable. I know I had it turned on, but if you look right here, I had it disabled. You middle mouse click in Dominos to disable something, and I have my cast bar disabled because I use another add-on for that, so I could probably disable it right here. Moving down, we have E-Align. So E-Align is really nice because if you don't use LVUI and you're creating your own UI and you still want to make sure everything is in the right spot and it all lines up, E-Align puts a grid over your screen, which is what you're looking at right now. All you do to get this to come up with E-Align is you type /align, and it will bring this grid up on your screen so you can make sure like your action bars are centered, and you know, for whatever reason, if you're moving your player frames, I keep all these at default, but if you're moving these down here or, you know, moving them around, you can make sure they're all level and even. So it makes it really nice to kind of make your UI look a little bit more symmetric, which is really nice if you're like me and having stuff 1 pixel off will drive you crazy. Moving on, we've got Easy Scrap. Quality of life add-on. That's literally all it is. It's just a scrap interface that you can make custom profiles for and set up auto scrapping, so it will fill the scrap for you. That way you don't have to drag and drop all of your items or click all of your items in. It'll just autofill, and then you just hit scrap and go with it. Just speeds it up. Not necessary at all. I used it. I actually got it this patch because I was DEing so many bracers in the scrapper, farming Expulsum to make the 470 socketed crafted gear. Just speeds it up, makes it a little bit easier. Highly recommend it if you're scrapping stuff all the time, or you really like Expulsum farming for crafted gear, or you need to. This will speed it up a lot. So really nice. I don't use it anymore because I got my 470s, so we're good there. Lordy UI. This is probably the add-on that I get asked the most questions about. So everyone that comes into my stream, they're like, "Yo, Bill, how's your UI look all black? Like, why is it all dark instead of like the default gray?" That's Lordy UI. That's all it does. It just darkens your entire UI up. So instead of the gray outline on the focus frame and the target frame and the player frame and, you know, the minimap and action bars and stuff like that, it changes it to black. And that's it. That's all Lordy UI does. I just prefer the look of the dark outline because it's a little bit more visible and it kind of makes it pop a little bit more on screen. Also, black and dark stuff is kind of my aesthetic, so we've got you know, the dark action bars to follow suit with that. Really like it. Lordy UI is a little strange. There is no in-game option for it. If you want to adjust settings in Lordy UI, you have to go into the actual file and alter the text document. If you guys are curious about that, like if you download Lordy UI, your keybinds and macro text will not show up. I believe by default you have to go into the Lordy UI file and adjust all that to get your macros to show up and your macro text and your keybinds to show up. If you guys are curious about Lordy UI more in depth, or Dominos more in depth, and you want to recreate my actual UI, leave a comment down below or come check out my live stream and let me know, and I will consider doing a more in-depth actual UI guide and like walking through how I set my UI up the way that I do, instead of just like this basic add-on overview. Moving on, Method Dungeon Tools is a really well-known add-on. I feel like at this point, I personally don't use it a lot because I'm not really into M+, but I've had a couple people be like, "Hey, you know, you need to download Method Dungeon Tools because we're going to link you the pull pattern and stuff like that." So that's the only reason I have it, is just so when I get into groups and stuff, if they want to use Method Dungeon Tools, I have it and I don't have to waste everybody's time and go download it. Just basically, you can select packs and kind of design your route through any dungeon, and you can follow percentages and stuff like that, so you can try and get through the dungeon as efficiently as possible. That's all it really does. Moving on, we've got Omnibar. Absolutely 1000% recommend Omnibar. This is my interrupt tracker. This is what you see on stream when I like juke kicks, or I fake premonition, or I know if a DK is using dark sim or spell reflect or anything like that. Omnibar is how I track all of that. It's super customizable. You could put literally every ability in the game on it. But that being said, I don't recommend doing that because there is such thing as information overload. I do recommend customizing it per your class, based off of what you actually want to track, but there is such a thing as information overload, so be careful. Other than that, I do highly recommend it because it will absolutely increase your awareness. Tenfold it will increase your awareness. Omni CC, this one is an interesting one. So Omni CC, all it does is it adds cooldown text on your action bars. So if I hit Ice Barrier, you see these numbers come up on top of my action bars, and they're counting down this second tracker, like counting down 17, 16, 15. This is actually a default option in game. It's right here. If you go to Interface, Action Bars, Show Numbers for Cooldowns, it is default in game. You don't need the add-on by any means. The reason I have the add-on is because I started using this add-on well before that in-game option was ever a thing by Blizzard. And I grew accustomed to the look of it because the default Blizzard cooldown tracker looks a little bit differently and it's not quite as customizable. So when they gave the option for it, I just kept using Omni CC because I prefer the way it looks. That being said, I do recommend showing numbers on your action bars because it will help you communicate with your teammates better. It's a little bit easier to, say 20 seconds left before, next shield instead of a little bit before next shield. That way your teammates know exactly what is up, or when it's up, I should say. Moving on, Quartz. This is what I mentioned earlier. I use a separate add-on for my cast bar. Quartz is that add-on. The reason I use Quartz is, one, latency tracking, because as a caster, which those of you who've been to the live stream and probably checked out any of my channel know that I pretty much only play casters. I play Mage and Warlock. I don't like melee. It's not enjoyable to me. But when you're playing a caster, being able to see the latency that your spells have is very important for spell charging, I guess is what you could call it. So for example, with Frost, say you have a Fingers of Frost proc, it's better to cast a Frostbolt and then Ice Lance immediately after that Frostbolt, so they both hit, than it is to just throw the Ice Lance. And being able to track your spellcast latency is a really good way to do that faster, because you know exactly when that Frostbolt is going to get picked up by the server, and you can start hitting that Ice Lance. The other thing it's really nice for, back when I used to play Shadow Priest a little bit, it gives Channeltix when you have a channeled ability like Mindflay. And in Legion, Legion and BFA as well, when you're channeling Mindflay, it's really important to optimize the damage in it. And being able to see when that spell is going to do damage helps you optimize it. And what I mean by Channeltix is when you're channeling an ability, it will show little hash marks in the cast bar. And all of those little hash marks are when your spell is going to do damage. So without being able to see those ticks, you might move 0.1 second before you're about to do damage again, whereas if you just waited that tenth of a second, you would do damage and then you could move, so you get a little bit more out of your spell. It's the main reason I use a cast bar add-on. The customization and stuff like that is nice, but that is not the actual reason I use it. I use it for the latency tracking more than anything, and the Channeltix is also very nice. Raider.io, very well-known add-on. It's a scoring system for Mythic Plus. It lets you know if you start a pub group, it lets you know what the highest dungeon they've done is, and also it gives you kind of a rough score based off of how many dungeons they've done and the level of dungeons they have done, so you can see like who really knows their stuff and who is maybe a little bit newer to Mythic Plus, so you can kind of create your group accordingly. Moving down, RC Loot Council is used by both of my raid guilds actually. It is a loot add-on that allows the loot council of your guild, or raid officers, or whoever does the loot distributing in your raid team, to get an idea of who has what and who deserves the item more. And how it's going to benefit the raid the most, essentially. It just organizes how we divvy out loot. That's all it does. There's no reason to have this if you're not a part of a raid team that wants you to use it, because in order for it to work properly, the entire raid team needs to have it. And you'll know most of the time if you have this add-on, you know why you have it, and if you don't have this add-on, you're probably not in a raid team that requires you to have it. S-Arena. It's basically Gladius. The only reason I use S-Arena over Gladius is because it tracks interrupts. That's the only reason. Gladius by default does not track interrupts. There is a version of it that tracks interrupts, and I believe you can write a script to track interrupts in Gladius. I did not feel like writing a script, and I don't want to go hunting for a version that is annoying to find. I used to have it at one point, but I completely forgot where I got it. S-Arena tracks interrupts by default. It's the main reason I use it. Right where CC shows up, right here, interrupts will also show up, so you can line up your CC chains better with S-Arena than you can with Gladius by default. That's the whole reason. It looks identical to Gladius. It does the exact same thing. Trinket, Dispel. I have my Dispels turned off right now because I was moving some stuff around, but I normally have them on. Trinket, Dispel, DR Tracker, Cast Bar, Health Bar, Mana Bar, and CC received, and interrupts received. That's it. That's all it does. Highly recommend S-Arena or Gladius, honestly, if you're wanting to get into Arena. Helps a lot with DRs and such. If you go to any Arena streamer out there, they have one of the two. Simpermute and Simulation Craft, they kind of work together. This is how you sim your character. So when I talk about simming my character, you have these add-ons installed. You're going to type /simc, copy this text. You're going to go to raidbots.com, and here we are. You're going to paste it in this text box right here. So we'll copy all this, delete that, paste in there. It's going to give you all of your gear. This is simming for Top Gear right now. It's going to give you all your gear, corruption stuff, trinkets, rings, the whole bit, any enchants, any essences. Select your talents, and then you select the type of fight that you want to simulate. So Patchwork, 1 boss, 5 minutes is kind of the default. And then you find Top Gear, and it will help you kind of figure out what gear you have on your character that is actually better for you, like actual upgrades. So that is how I sim my character. Highly recommend it if you guys are curious about that more. There's tons of videos out there, or if you want to see a video from me, leave a comment down below and I will talk about simming your character a little bit more. Tomcat's Tours, moving on to the next one. Super basic add-on. All I use it for is finding rares in the new zones for 8.3. Just tracks rares, and if they have fun stuff that drops, like companions or mounts or toys or anything like that. The stars on the map, this is literally all it does. That's it. Just pulls up stars and this shows you rare spawns. Kind of helps you with the world quest, where it's like, hey, go kill 3 rares. That way I know, okay, there's a ton of rares that spawn down here. If I go look down there, I'll probably get done fairly quickly. And last but not least, we have Weak Auras 2, which is probably one of the biggest add-ons in World of Warcraft right now. So I only use Weak Auras in Fire because I use it to help me learn the spec. I actually don't like Weak Auras because of the on-screen clutter that it creates. But if you guys have been in my stream when I'm playing Fire and doing PvE, you see all this extra stuff here. These are all Weak Auras. So essentially, it makes everything that's really important for doing DPS as a Fire Mage in the dead center of my screen to where I can't miss it, because I'm still new to Fire and I'm still learning the spec. So having a nice Weak Aura string kind of helps me optimize my gameplay a little bit more while I'm learning the spec. Highly recommend it. It will make you a better player. It will make you do more DPS, or probably heal better and potentially even tank better. I will say though, like I said earlier, there is such a thing as information overload. You can absolutely show too much with Weak Auras. So be picky, look for a string that works for you, or think about creating your own. It's hard to find that middle line with a Weak Aura that's going to benefit you and a Weak Aura that's going to kind of fluster you because it's showing you so much you don't know what to look at. That being said, if you don't want to go through making your own weak aura string, you can go to wego.io and download a weak aura string that was created by somebody else. That is the weak aura string I have right here. I did not make this. I found this on Wego and I was like, you know what? This shows everything that I wanted to show. It's a smart weak aura design, and what I mean by that is if I alter my trinket, like right now I'm playing Safeguard and Psych Shredder because I was playing Frost and Arena, but in Raid I would normally play Fire, and I would play Font and Badge, and you'll see right here it swaps to Font and Badge, and it gives you a cooldown of those trinkets. So if you're altering talents or trinkets, the weak aura will switch with you, and it kind of just keeps everything working uniformly is basically it. Other than that, those are all of the add-ons I use in roughly the way that I use them. If you guys want to know about any individual add-on more in depth, come check out the live stream at twitch.tv/Baelmis. There will be a link down below in the description, as well as leave a comment if you have questions about a certain add-on. I hope you guys have a kick-ass rest of your day. Stay heavy. I'm out of here, and I will see you guys next time. Adios.